So UFC 11, the Proving Ground, took place on September 20th, 1996 at the Augusta Civic Centre in, you guessed it, Augusta, Georgia. 4.5k in attendance tonight, 92,000 buys, but the buys aren't great, okay? They are suffering after the smear campaign from John McCain, and that's now 2 in a row under 100,000. Or maybe people just really hated UFC 9, but we start off in a galaxy far, far away apparently, with a highlight package where we run through some of our fighters. I suppose it's mostly just highlight clips, and then there's an actual emphasis, a focus on two fighters really. Tank Abbott, who is back from suspension, we'll get to that. They're trying to build him up, and they're also trying to build up Mark Coleman. They sort of make the visual connection that these two are going to fight tonight. So you would think that here, maybe we should put them together in the first round just to make sure that fight happens, instead of sort of trying to predict the future of this very real sport. It sends the wrong message here. But we come out of the highlight package, we come out of the open, and we go to the city of Augusta, which looks very nice, by the way. I don't know if I've got any viewers in Augusta, but it looks very nice. And they then start talking about cotton. And I don't think anybody wants that history lesson right there, buddy. Okay? Especially when they look at the building, the Cotton Exchange. Now, I'd never heard of this before, but I mean, no, we can't be doing this. The Cotton Exchange in 1886. Good Lord. Interesting note here, Igor Vochanchin was invited to this event, but he declined the offer. And I just thought I would mention that there for the Pride fans out there. They might appreciate that note. We will be reviewing Pride very soon, I have not forgot. But we get to the arena, and this just feels small. I don't know how to put that any other way, to be honest, but we get to Bruce Beck on commentary, who tells us Tank Abbott is returning after a 7-month suspension after the Brawl in Bayamon. It happened outside the octagon, and if anybody in the comments can tell me what happened to Tank Abbott in Puerto Rico, I'll give you many thanks and pin the comment. Jeff Blatnick is here with Mark Coleman, who, with all the charisma of a chair, talks about how he's going to win, talks about Tank Abbott, so on and so forth. They're really pushing Tank Abbott here. But we play interview bingo. You can probably guess what he says. We then get Don Wilson and Tank Abbott, who is the most bothered guy ever, just blunt as fuck. He calls himself the Street Fighter, puts down the Pit Fighter name that was given to him by people at UFC. He didn't want that name, whatever. We now see the bracket, a few debutants here, a few returning fighters. We go over the rules and ways to win before getting to our first fight of the night. Something that's become a fixture of these early UFC events is the sort of freak show element. The really big fucking fat guy that we just call a sumo. Now, they don't call this guy a sumo, but he should not fucking be in here. So here comes Julian Sanchez. He's going to be up against Mark Coleman. And Sanchez, this is his first pro fight and his only pro fight, so that tells you how this one is going to go. I have no idea where they dig these people up from. I genuinely don't. It's as though they go into the fucking parking lot or dig some guy out the stand and say, here, do you want to get your ass beat tonight? But he looks like a heavyweight of today, to be honest. A real trailblazer in the sport. A man with a true vision of where the game is heading. Some may say a visionary. But he's got to go up against Mark Coleman, HGH'd to the max, practically leaking juice at this point. And this is just a lamb to slaughter. Rich Goins is back announcing, and I see Ken Shamrock in the back there, likely here to support his boy Bolander. Fight begins, and Mark Coleman almost pities this guy and is just waiting for him to give up. Applies the choke. He knows this is just fucked up. I have no idea where they got this guy from. Denny's, McDonald's, whatever. They shake hands after the fight. Coleman is through to the next round. Why even waste our time with this? And it's hard for me to feel bad for this guy. He turns up and didn't take a tremendous beating, still gets paid, whatever, but did we really need this? Was this a necessary first round fight, especially the way that this tournament ends up going? But our next fight is Reza Nasri, an Iranian wrestler, and he's up against Brian Johnson, who I was actually quite impressed with at UFC 10. He says he's keeping this on the feet and he wants to box Nasri. And so the fight actually just begins and Nasri shoots on Johnson. Johnson stuffs the takedown and then gets his own. Holy shit. What happened to the boxing? But I suppose it doesn't even matter. And Johnson TKOs Nasri and just freaks the absolute fuck out. After the fight, just screams fuck you at Nasri. Like, from his boots. He meant every single bit of that. I have no idea what happened that made him do that. Commentary saying Big John was late and that he apologised for it. I don't think it was so egregious, but apparently he apologised for being a punch too late. But, I mean, whatever, it happens. It's like, whatever. It's a bad knockout. And they show Big John either talking to one of the judges, or it might have been like the doctor's table or whatever, and it looks as though he's like, yeah, fucked up on that one, sorry. But again, I didn't think it was just so outrageous. Nasri's like, he looks kind of dead there, but sorry with the butt. I'm trying to enunciate better. I think this YouTube stuff might help with that, but not to worry. Next up, we get the return of Tank Abbott. He takes on Sam Adkins, who we seen get smashed by Don Fry at, I think, UFC 8. Commentary calls Tank UFC's original bad guy, and to me, that's just in the eyes of the viewer who the bad guy is. To me, Hoyce Gracie was always the bad guy, but nobody would have called him, the UFC bad guy. Like, it's up to the viewer to determine the good and the evil in this world. But, like, to me, Tank's just a bit of a dick. The fight starts, Tank immediately takes down Adkins, which is very different for Tank Abbott. We don't normally see this. Normally he just charges at you and swings, but he ends up throwing some intermittent ground and pound. He doesn't really commit one way or the other to either pursue the finish or sort of hold control. He ends up holding the forearm on the throat of Adkins, who then taps. And would you look who it is? In Tank Abbott's corner, I never even realised. And I don't know how long he's been here. If this is just his first night, his first event, he must be like nearly like his early 20s. But it's fucking the Huntington Beach bad boy, Tito Ortiz. Like, he can't be that far away from making his debut, actually, now that I think about it. But he's here, he's in the corner of Tank Abbott, and that is like an undefeated duo. Can you imagine running into those two on the street? Jesus Christ. That's him there on the left, by the way, and that's pre-CTE. This is a dangerous combination right here. But look, that's for a later date, the run of Tito Ortiz. Right now, we have Fabio Gurgel versus Jerry Bolander, who we will call JB for short. He makes his way to the octagon and daps up Shamrock before entering the cage. Shamrock, we've seen cage side at the first for the first fight announcements, and then I never seen him again until now. But JB is only 21 years old here, fighting out of Shamrock's gym, Lions Den, so you know what is coming, sadly. The fight begins, they clinch straight away, the PTSD, oh my god, the flashbacks to Shamrock. JB has his back up against the fence and does actually really well here. I will give him credit for using the fence to reverse the position and get a takedown of his own here. But he's now in the guard, and this is a familiar position. This is all we train at Lions Den. There's actually a motif, a manifesto on the wall. Step 1, get into your opponent's guard. Step 2, never pass the guard. Never leave the guard. And that's it. That's what you learn here at the Lions Den. Now, a lot of fence work from JB. He actually uses it quite well. He slaps the absolute shit out of Fabio here at one point. Once he does that, they end up breaking, or he hits him sort of on the break. And after the break, JB just kicks him whilst he's down, but JB has shoes on, so he'll get fined for kicking him, and commentary say that if he does that again, he'll be disqualified. Big John doesn't break it, he doesn't split them up. he gives a sort of warning as the action is going. But anyone who hasn't watched the previous reviews, fighters that wear shoes aren't allowed to kick, only those with bare feet or wrapped ankles. And I get that, I'm part of that gang, but JB just tries to kick him again. Like an idiot. Does he not know what the rules are or what Big John is saying? I don't understand. JB pulls the ghillie and spits out the mouthpiece, but Jurgel escapes, sorry. He's able to then pass the guard, and in doing so, JB's able to reverse the position. Now he's on top. Using the cage to keep his position, commentary can already tell this thing's going the distance, and we're only 6 minutes in. We have 9 to go. Whilst we're here and we have a ways to go, commentary say that Jurgel was complaining about there being time limits in the fight. Is this just a jiu-jitsu thing? Are all these jiu-jitsu guys just such bitches? How is Marco Ruas, the only Brazilian, not scared about a time limit? We need more luta livre guys over here instead of these jiu-jitsu guys. Shout out to luta livre. I stand with you guys. We do not lie on our backs like this, because Jurgel is really starting to piss me off here. We finally leave the guard. The crowd erupt, and then we're right back to it. We're only at 12 minutes, and thank God there's no overtime here, but we still have 3 to go. But don't worry, I will spare you. We go to a decision, and JB wins by unanimous decision. The crowd could not give a single fuck about either of these guys. And after a pretty good first round of fights, and even a decent start to this fight, they just killed the crowd with the last, say, 3/4 of the fight. But JB's through to the next round anyway, so he doesn't care. In our first semi-final, we get... Oh, by the way, this woman here, she was here at UFC 1, and I think maybe 2. Who is she? Some guy asked her to sign a magazine. Who is that? If anybody could put that in the comments as well, I would appreciate that, because that's annoying me, because they put the camera on her and don't mention her name. No one references her, but she's clearly somebody. I don't understand. But again, Mark Coleman versus Brian Johnson, first semi-final. This sounds like a decent fight just on the face of it, only 15 pounds between these two. And that's not actually too bad at this point in time for UFC. And look at... Did you see Javier Mendez is also here? He has been around for a long time, folks. If you're a new fan and just seen this guy with Khabib and Islam, he has been doing this shit at AKA for a very long time. And he is here in 1996 cornering fighters. So I feel like we must have seen him before now, because commentary's referenced AKA, but this is the first time that I've actually recognised him and seen him in the corner. Anyway, fight begins. They make no contact for 30 seconds, which is rare. But Johnson starts using leg kicks, which could have been a good strategy if Coleman then didn't just shoot in, take him down with relative ease, spams headbutts and punches before Johnson just turns over and the fight is stopped. And there is so much roid rage in Mark Coleman. He is, there's fired up. Jeff Blatnick says there may be an element of over-celebrating. An element? No. He's gone so ballistic, Mark Hall would be telling this guy to calm down. And it's as though we have this secret where we can't say here, do you think this guy might be on something? And Brian Johnson's on the sauce too, just so you know. But look, his family's in the crowd, and that's very nice for him. But moving onward, or in fact, not moving onward, because commentary is stalling right now, which means only one thing, as we await an alternate being picked, and we have decided that it is going to be Scott Ferozzo, who competed at UFC 8 in the David versus Goliath tournament. If you remember, he got choked out by Jerry Bolander in hilarious fashion when he lay there on the floor like a beached whale. Scott's here with Don Fry, and he rips his shirt off like Hulk Hogan. 350 pounds, by the way, against a near 300-pound Tank Abbott. Bruce Beck says that Tank's hobbies include going to bars, getting crazy, and raising hell. I think this might have had something to do with the Brawl in Bayamon, or the Bayamon Brawl, or whatever he tagged it as earlier. I can't prove that, but I think that is Bruce's intrusive thoughts coming out here, because he clearly knows what happened. and nobody's mentioned anything so far, like either at this event or the previous ones where he's been on commentary. I'm guessing that some sort of bar brawl in Puerto Rico has something to do with his suspension. Tank tells commentary to let people know that he has more assault charges on his resume than any other fighter in UFC, and I would be inclined to agree with that. Now, I don't know Tank personally, but you just get that feeling when you look at him. So the fight starts and they just swing. This is more typical of the Tank Abbott fight, not the attempted and successful takedown, but just standing, swinging like, you know. And Tank presses Frozo against the cage before they just again devolve into just a slugfest. Tank clinches again against the fence, and they need to censor Scott saying "fuck you" to Tank Abbott. I couldn't hear what was said before that. But Frozo in the clinch starts landing knees and some hands on Tank. Then Scott just starts teeing off crazy. It gets split up, gets broken by Big John to check on the cut at Frozo's eye. But they let it go on, thankfully. And then they just start swinging again immediately after the break. About 3.5 minutes, Tank has Frozo pressed against the cage, and Tank is holding the cage to keep him stuck there. But Frozo is hitting Tank with these knees that are definitely hurting Tank. And that begs the question, why stay here? Why stay here and eat these knees? Why not break or attempt a takedown? We've seen Frozo get subbed before, and that's how Tank won his last fight in literally the last round about half an hour ago. I mean, half an hour is a guess, but you know what I mean. Literally his last fight. And instead, he just stands there, willingly accepting these knees to the body, whilst in a dominant position. Like, he's in the dominant position, but he's taking more damage here than Frozo. Tank finally attempts a trip after about 9 minutes, unsuccessful. Frozo just has these nasty knees up the middle. The punches he's throwing are just creating like a ripple effect on Tank's excess fat. They're pretty ineffective, but the knees are really good. And I ask again, why is Tank continuing to stay here and eat this damage? He has his fingers locked into the fence, holding himself here. Like, Tank's in position to split this up if he wants to, but he waits for Big John to do it, which I disagreed with, because Tank is in the dominant position again. He's controlling the fact that they're stuck there. He could have broken it up, but Scott was actually benefiting from that situation, so why break it up? But then again, I'm not a referee. They are split up. They start swinging again. Scott gets the better of the exchange. Tank presses him against the fence again. The crowd start booing and chatting bullshit. And now commentary's saying that Mark Coleman must be laughing right now. This is the same shit that happened at UFC 10, where Coleman goes in there against a much more tired opponent. Like, this is just bullshit. Like, the round ends, we go to 3-minute overtime. They start swinging again before we just resort to the fence. There's Don Fry right behind the action, commentary asking for this to be broken up already, which is hilarious, considering how long commentary would spend talking about the greatness of Royce Gracie while he lay there for minutes on end doing nothing. Last 10 seconds, we get a bit of a scrap before Tank just reverts to type in the last second. We go to the decision, and it is unanimous for Scott Frozo. Scott looks like he was about to keel over and die a second ago, but then he gets all fired up, celebrating after the decision. He gives a fired up interview talking about making it to the final. He gives all the credit to Don Fry. He says that the fight against Mark Coleman is going to go the exact same way. And now UFC looks pretty fucking stupid, having promoted this potential showdown between Tank and Coleman, that now you, as the customer who bought the pay-per-view, will not be getting. Here we go, UFC 11, the Proving Ground final, Scott Frozo versus Mark Coleman. And now I understand why we are stalling here. Scott just went through 18 minutes, and wait a second, no, we now see the bracket, and now Troven, I know it looks like Travern, but Bruce Beck calls him Troven, so we'll go with that. He's been put into the final to take on Mark Coleman, even though we just seen Scott and he was fine and looking forward to the final. Commentary say that the cut above his eye may be the reason for him pulling out. We see Tank Abbott come out here shaking hands with people in the crowd, laughing, joking. We then see Coleman with his coach waiting to go out, speaking with someone in a shirt and tie. Meanwhile, Tank is out here, again laughing and joking. Commentary says he's coming back for the Ultimate 1996. That's our next event. We'll get to that soon. We make it to the back of the back, and Don Fry is shaking hands with his old coach. No! Don, he celebrated your downfall. What are you doing? He was swinging that towel around going crazy when he thought you lost at UFC 10. But now we hear that Troven has broke his hand, and with those back of the head punches that he won his alternate fight with. Now Bruce Beck is saying, well, what about the alternates that lost their fights? Could we see them get the call? Tank Abbott is literally sitting at the octagon door right now, asking to be picked. Nearly. I can't confirm that, but it looks that way. Like, I don't think anyone would complain about that. That is literally the fight you've been promoting, hoping that it would happen. He's at least won a fight tonight. And it was only a decision loss that a few events ago would have been considered a draw. And the fans would want to see that fight. So out comes Mark Coleman, and that's it. That is the tournament. Nobody's left to fight Coleman. And even although if we needed an opponent, Tank is right here, but that would ruin the integrity of the tournament, which has so much integrity as it stands. We seen Julian Sanchez. We know you don't give a shit about the integrity of a tournament. Coleman says he's going to be at the Ultimate, but they've found someone for him to fight in an exhibition for the fans in attendance. I think it wasn't explained very well, but Coleman is apparently on the same side of the bracket as Don Fry, so they're trying to promote that fight for the Ultimate. At least they've learned from this situation here. But like, he's name dropping other fighters. He'd love to fight Shamrock, and he also names Kevin Randleman as his exhibition opponent. It's a good day for the Pride FC mentions. This is great foreshadowing for the channel, by the way, guys. Thank you so much. Igor Vorchanchin, now Kevin Randleman. Like, and we even see Randleman in the octagon here. I'll put it in there at the end. You see a sort of top-down view of the octagon with Coleman and Randleman in it. But we do not get to see that fight. That fight is not here on Fight Pass on this pay-per-view. And I don't know if it exists. I don't know if that fight was like on the tapes when they sold the video for the event. If it is, I would like to see it. But that's it. Bruce Beck brings the show to a close. And that's us. That is UFC 11 Proving Ground. Not all bad. Obviously a disappointing finish and start, now that I think about it. Sanchez should never have been in here, but at least it was quick. Johnson and Tank had good first round fights, even if JB was boring as fuck. Then again, he is up against a jiu-jitsu guy. It was like Shamrock and Gracie light. You know what I mean? It was just not fun. I enjoyed the semi-final fights, even if Tank and Frozo got tedious at the end, to be fair to it, but it was fine enough. I just wish they would have used Randleman as an alternate. I bet Coleman would have said it was fine. They're friends. They're about to fight anyway. UFC doesn't have a problem with it, so clearly not an issue, but hey-ho. Between Coleman, Fry, Tank Abbott, we have some names already announced for the Ultimate 1996, and that will be the next review on the channel, so subscribe, hit the notify bell, find out when that drops, which should be soon. Like the video, comment your own thoughts below. We are almost done with 1996. We're about to get real underground in 1997. Soon enough, Pride will be on the way. We'll see you all very soon.